Welcome everyone to the Rings of Power Season 2 Episode 6 review. This one is really just made up stuff through and through, and yeah, the whole show is, but this episode is probably the most far removed from anything remotely resembling Tolkien yet. But the good news is, we did it guys, we raised money for Sauron's new wig. Sure, it's got a bow now, and it still looks very fake, but is the hairline better? Yeah, marginally. It's all about those small victories. Now, let's dive right into the review. We start with Arondir, who is now going after Adar and his orcs. He runs into orc deserters. Yeah, that's correct. These orcs have apparently rejected Daddy Adar's commands and run away from battle. Or, they would have run away if Arondir had let them, but he needed his action scene. It's been a while. On one of the orcs, he finds a map, and now apparently he knows that the orcs are headed for Eregion. More on that later. Speaking of Eregion, Celebrimbor is making the 9 rings for men and losing his mind. He's forgotten the name of his assistant, which... Celebrimbor, welcome to the club. Murdania, Megamind, Miss Mary Sue... Who could keep track of all of them? They're also... blonde. For the Rings of Power, Amazon has created plenty of new characters, but the existence of some is particularly outrageous because though they are not technically background extras, they effectively are just background extras. A few episodes ago, we were introduced to the personalityless Fellowship of the Whigs, and now we have these elven smiths of Eregion. The show wants us to believe that they play a more important role than just extras. But we haven't been introduced to them by name or otherwise. They've had 0 lines so far. They have barely been making rings. They have no discernible personalities. They are here just to fill out the space on screen and tick certain boxes, let's be real. It's very frustrating because the Rings of Power TV show chose to forge these characters in the fires of Mount Amazon, but instead of giving them personalities or at least some features, it uses them as disposable props. It's worse than if they weren't here in the first place. But let's move on, otherwise we'll never get through it. Sauron, with the new wig, shows up, and guess what? He's now a... Bowman! Yes, he's got a hair bow. We saw it in the trailer, very briefly, but it's even more unbelievable seeing it in the actual show. It just looks so silly. Illegally blonde Sauron addresses the concerned elves of Eregion in Celebrimbor's place because Celebrimbor flat out doesn't want to do it. The elves then tell the blonde Sauron that their soldiers have been attacked by orcs and they have retrieved one soldier, who's got a message written all over him. Literally. But fear not, this is all going according to Sauron's grand plan. I don't know why I'm questioning anything in the show, but did everyone at Eregion just accept blonde Sauron as the new authority? I know they think he's some kind of messenger from the Valar, but just because he's this mysterious ring-making assistant, is he also the next in line to command Eregion if Celebrimbor is indisposed? And yeah, I know, magic, deception, whatever, but there should be at least some conflict here. Where is the commander of these soldiers, for example, to decide what is to be done with his fellow fallen man? Why is Sauron making these decisions? Why is no one, absolutely no one in Eregion questioning why an immortal being sent from the Valar to help with the making of rings is now in charge of this elven city? Why is no one even trying to get to Celebrimbor and ask him, what the heck is happening? In Numenor, Elendil has been imprisoned for allegedly starting riots, and he refuses to bow down to Pharazôn and accept him as his true ruler, so he is sentenced to... drumroll please... the sea worm! Yes guys, we'll see the worm again in this episode. The idea is that the Valar, through the sea worm, will decide whether Elendil is guilty or not. If the worm eats him, well, then we know what the verdict is. So what happens at this trial is that Miriel volunteers as tribute, takes Elendil's place, and is put on trial instead of him. They rationalize this by saying she can take his place because the crime was committed in her name. Fair enough, I guess. Okay, but the obvious question here is Muriel takes Elendil's place. He's obviously devastated by this, but all he has to do is say, "Actually, I will accept you as my true king and bow down to you, Pharazôn." With that, he would save himself and Muriel. Plus, if Muriel gets eaten by the sea worm, then there is no one to challenge Pharazôn and Elendil has no one else to champion, so his entire cause becomes meaningless and Pharazôn wins by default and because Eagle. But because the script says so, the sea worm pulls Muriel under in a dramatic fashion, screams at her for about a second, and spits her out.
What are you doing in my swamp?
In the desert, Nori learns that the diverse hobbits aren't nomads like them, they are very attached to their homes, actually. And meanwhile, her friend and the low IQ hobbit engage in flirting and kiss, which is followed by this genius line. I don't understand why this was needed at all. It's not cute, it's not endearing, it's nothing. These two have less chemistry than Arondir and Bronwyn. They hardly know each other, and we, the audience, hardly know anything about them individually, therefore it's hard for us to care for them or see why they might be drawn to each other. What did they bond over? If you want to shoehorn this in, give them something. Anything. They both love long walks. They enjoy a martini, shaken, not stirred. Their pet peeve is people who chew with their mouth open. They both like to roll in the mud like Peppa Pig. Anything would do at this point. Meanwhile, Discount Gandalf is on a quest of his own. Each wizard must find his staff. The wand chooses the wizard, Mr. Potter. Oh, wait. Wrong movie, wrong line. Let's try this again. The staff chooses the wizard, Mr. Gandalf. And yeah, there's also this. He can either look for his staff or go help Nori, but he can't do both because the script says so. So it's either his forged in the fires of Mount Amazon friend or his forged in the fires of Mount Amazon storyline. In Khazad-dûm, the ring is helping the dwarves to be very successful with their mining endeavors. Sauron pays them a visit because he needs mithril. He makes them an offer, but King Durin rejects him. Blonde bowman Sauron leaves, but King Durin reveals that his actual plan is to name an even higher price for the mithril later on. The ring makes the two Durins fight, and it yeets Prince Durin across the room. Disa is outraged and knows that she and her husband will need to stand up to the king and to the power of the ring. Meanwhile, Prince Durin is unsure. He can't do it. He just can't do it, guys. It's his father. How could he defy him? Yeah, look, I think this could work if only there was more build-up and development. Let's say the two Durins started off on really good terms from season 1, and as the ring enters the picture, the cracks slowly start to show. Then there would be a notable difference in their relationship. But what we had was several ups and downs in their relationship across these 2 seasons, and each time the conflict was fairly quickly resolved. So I think now this falling out between them doesn't feel that special or that important, not as much as it should. Disa doesn't want some dwarves to keep mining, so she screams, sings, and summons bats. She is the first female Batwoman dwarf of color. Confirmed. Okay, so she summons the bats, but did she, in the same breath, also command them to attack the other dwarves? Because they seem to be doing that, yet they leave her and Durin alone. Also, what was this supposed to achieve? They even said it themselves. More dwarves will be sent down here. If Prince Durin and Disa secretly rallied some dwarves to their cause, they would actually have backup and could potentially achieve more than a swarm of bats could. Another subplot that we have is, of course, Adar and Galadriel. He imprisoned her and allegedly wants her help. They discuss how they were both deceived by Sauron, and they talk about what Sauron promised them. Galadriel says he promised her an army, but Adar says that Sauron promised him children. Okay. I don't remember when exactly Sauron promised Galadriel an army. There was talk of power, but I don't remember an army. Let me know if you do. Because Galadriel's whole motivation last season was avenging her brother and finding Sauron, making sure he doesn't return. She failed at that miserably, but that aside, as far as armies go, she didn't even need Sauron, because she got an army of Numenoreans. Plus, she was the commander of the Northern Army. You know what? We're moving on. So Adar knows that Halbrand is Sauron. Galadriel now apparently also knows he's making more rings. She and Adar discuss what to do next, and Adar just can't help himself. He desperately wants to show Galadriel his big orc legion. Is this supposed to be impressive? Because we can hardly see anything. Are we supposed to be in awe or frightened by this sight? Oh no, it's torches! Dozens of torches in the night! But Galadriel now knows Sauron's mind, so she and she alone knows that this is exactly what Sauron wants. He wants Adar and his orcs to attack Eregion. And yeah, we're most likely gonna get the Battle of Eregion in the next episode, or maybe they're saving it for the finale. I just hope we'll be able to see something, because I can't handle another dark Rings of Power episode where I can't see a thing and all there is bad dialogue. Now, one quick note about the costumes before we wrap this up. Accessorizing. I struggled with finding the proper word for my observations, but in this episode it finally hit me. I think with so many costumes in the Rings of Power, for example this ensemble for Blonde Sauron, it doesn't look like the pieces are mismatched. They look fine, but they don't necessarily look like they were made as one. For example, nowadays you might go and buy a dress, a belt, shoes, and a bag. You assemble the outfit and it can look great, but it's not an outfit that was originally made as a unity. This is what a lot of the Rings of Power costumes look like to me. Like somebody made these different pieces separately, and then they took, let's say, a dress or a tunic and rummaged through the costume room to find a matching belt, a matching cape for it. And that's fine. They may go well together, but the result is it can look as if the outfits are assembled rather than intentionally created as one piece from the concept point onward. I'm not claiming that this is what happened for sure. This is just my observation and a possible interpretation. So these are my thoughts on this episode of The Rings of Power. Let me know what you think in the comments below, and thank you very much for watching. We have some Rings of Power themed merch, so feel free to check it out. The link will be in the description box. I'll see you back on Friday or Saturday for episode 7 review, and never forget...
The sea is always right!
The sea is always right!